The newly inaugurated President Donald Trump revealed on the Truth Social platform that Elon Musk, in partnership with the former Republican presidential candidate of the United States, Vivek Ramaswamy, will lead the Department of Government Efficiency. This newly created department will work in conjunction with the White House's Office of Budget and Management to reduce government costs. It was even mentioned that it could be compared to a modern-day Manhattan Project. The Manhattan Project was a secret initiative during World War II where scientists from the United States, United Kingdom, and Canada collaborated to develop the first atomic bombs. The comparison highlights how grand and revolutionary the plan is to reduce government spending. This proposal was widely debated in the final moments of the campaign, and Trump stated that the goals are ambitious. At a rally in New York last month, he declared that he wanted to cut $2 trillion from the federal budget of $7 trillion if achieved. The United States could record its first budget surplus since 2001. Initially, it was unclear how long Musk estimated it would take, but Trump specified that the department's work must be completed by July 4, 2026. This means Musk has 18 months to meet the targets. In this video, we will explore the method Musk proposes to downsize the government, that is, to reduce the number of government agencies and expenditures similar to Javier M's approach, and whether it is really possible to achieve this goal. Now, let's discuss why the United States might need to streamline the federal government. Musk presents two main reasons. Firstly, he claims that the United States is on the brink of bankruptcy. In other words, the federal government is spending much more than it should, leading to national debt reaching unsustainable levels in the fiscal year 2024, which runs from October 2023 to September 2024. The United States recorded a deficit of $18 trillion, approximately 6.3% of GDP, or all the wealth produced. This deficit is alarming, especially because we are not in a period of war. Over the past 50 years, the average deficit in the United States has been about 3.8%. The only times the United States faced such a high deficit were right after the financial crisis. And during the pandemic, the continuous growth of deficits has caused the national debt of the United States to exceed 120% of GDP, meaning the country owes 20% more than the value it produces in a year. This is alarming because if not controlled, it could have serious long-term repercussions for the economy. These numbers are already quite alarming on their own, but the situation has worsened further with the recent increase in interest rates. With this increase, new loans have become more expensive, and even though the interest on existing debts does not always change, in many cases, variable rate loans are also impacted, causing some borrowers to have to pay higher interest. This diagram illustrates the government financial inflows that are exclusively destined for interest payments, and as you can see, there has been a significant increase in recent years. In simple terms, the increase in interest rates is making the cost of debt more burdensome in the United States budget. The main sources of revenues and expenses unveil. The country's financial management revenues mainly come from individual taxes, which make up 49% of the total, and Social Security contributions, which contribute another 36%. This indicates that the largest share of government money comes directly from citizens' pockets, either through taxes on their income or through mandatory contributions to retirement and health assistance programs. On the other hand, the main government expenditures reflect its priorities. 22% of the 2024 budget, covering from October of the previous year to September 2024, was allocated to Social Security, which provides income to retirees and people with disabilities, representing the largest portion. Health-related expenses concerning public medical care absorb 13.5%, and both Medicare, the program that covers medical expenses for those over 65, and national defense consume 133%. There is substantial investment in armed forces and country protection, but now at the end of the year, debt payment costs account for more than 15% of all United States government spending, which is almost 3 times more than the average of G7 countries, which is significantly lower. This means that the United States is spending more on debt interest than on defense or Medicare, the United States government program that provides health insurance to people over 65 and people with certain disabilities, designed to cover medical costs, such as doctor visits, hospitalizations, and medications. The concern is that the United States could become trapped in a vicious debt cycle, having to take on more loans just to pay the interest on the debt, which creates more debt and consequently more interest expenses, perpetuating a cycle. Furthermore, Trump's fiscal plans, which include significant tax cuts, are likely to worsen the situation. These cuts imply that the government will collect less revenue, making it harder to reduce the debt, according to the Nonpartisan Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, which prepared a report analyzing the long-term fiscal impact of the candidates' proposals. Trump's proposals could add another $8 trillion to the national debt over the next 10 years, raising the deficit to 10% of GDP, meaning the government would be spending 10% more than it collects in a year, forcing the government to take on more loans to cover the deficit. There is also the danger that if the government continues to spend large amounts, inflation will not retreat. This happens because more public investment equals more money in circulation, which can keep prices rising. If inflation remains high, the government is prevented from lowering interest rates, as this would further intensify inflation. Keeping interest rates high, the burdens on public debt also remain high, meaning the United States needs to spend more just to cover these burdens. In summary, if significant cuts in public spending are not made, Musk believes that the country could plunge into a situation where the debt grows uncontrollably, potentially leading to insolvency. The second reason Musk often points out is his belief that by reducing government waste, it is possible to improve the debt situation. In other words, cutting the waste of resources would help reduce expenses and consequently the debt. Additionally, if the government stops wasting money and private companies can expand more, this could raise national production GDP, strengthening the economy as a whole. Musk also argues that a large portion of government spending is wasted, paying people to perform unnecessary tasks or sometimes to do nothing when they could be employed in productive activities in the private sector. Does this sound familiar? Certainly. Regardless of the country, this also happens to achieve this. Musk proposes deregulation. Deregulation is like peeling an onion. It is about simplifying bureaucracy and reducing the number of government agencies that often complicate more than help. The idea is that by eliminating unnecessary regulations and merging or extinguishing redundant entities like agencies that perform similar functions and generate repetitive procedures, for example, if two entities are responsible for overseeing similar aspects of workplace safety, merging them could streamline processes and save resources. Imagine that every procedure you perform is like an obstacle race. With so many regulations and offices, it's easy to stumble and waste time. Deregulation seeks to clear the path, making everything more straightforward and less frustrating. However, not everything is so simple. Some fear that by unifying entities or simplifying regulations, important protections for the environment, safety, or workers' rights may be lost. For example, if care isn't taken when unifying environmental agencies, there could be more pollution. This can happen because by unifying two agencies, the amount of personnel or resources available to enforce environmental laws may be reduced, diminishing the effectiveness of regulations affecting air and water quality. Similarly, removing safety regulations could make workplaces less safe, increasing the risk of accidents. Also, reducing laws that protect workers could make it easier to commit labor abuses like unfair wages or poor workers' conditions. It's like if when cleaning the house we threw away valuable things without realizing it. Therefore, it's essential to find a balance, simplify without ceasing to protect the essential. Elon Musk has demonstrated in his companies that it is possible to cut expenses and expand efficiency with an innovative and pragmatic method. And he wishes to apply these same tactics to the United States government. Firstly, vertical integration. At Tesla, Musk cut out middleman by internally producing essential components in the government. This could mean merging agencies that perform similar functions. As already mentioned, he stated, "We are spending resources on all these government entities. And in fact, I asked the artificial intelligence how many exist, and the government doesn't even have clarity on how many there are. So the number hovers around 450, depending on you classify or name an agency at the federal level. This indicates that the number may vary because some entities have similar functions or names, making it complicated to count exactly how many there are. But if we consider this number, which is an underestimation, there are almost twice as many agencies as the years the United States has existed. We are creating entities at an average of almost 2 agencies per year. It's crazy. This creates enormous pressure. Each year, the federal bureaucracy continues to swell, adding so many norms and requirements that sometimes it's a maze to understand how to comply with everything. It seems like anything you want to do has some bureaucratic barrier, and this makes many people or companies feel like they simply can't move forward with their plans. If you want to do something new with your company, you can almost bet it will be illegal. Another strategy relates to SpaceX. Instead of building rockets that were used once and then discarded, Musk managed to reuse them. which revolutionized the industry and allowed for drastically reduced launch costs in the public sphere. This could be applied to infrastructure, imagine roads, or buildings that use recycled materials and modular designs to facilitate their repair or expansion instead of building everything from scratch. Each time Musk adopts the approach of thinking from first principles, and this means redesigning systems from their foundation for the government. This would involve questioning processes that are done because they've always been done that way. For example, instead of complicated paper procedures, digitizing them and making them accessible from an app could be more efficient and economical. Automation, as in Tesla factories, could also be applied. Repetitive processes like reviewing applications or managing payments could be done with artificial intelligence, speeding up the work and reducing errors. Finally, the austerity mindset. Musk advocates for spending only on what is necessary in government. This could mean identifying programs or projects that do not provide clear value to the public and redirecting those resources to priorities like health, education, or infrastructure. For example, an agricultural subsidy program that once helped stabilize the production of certain crops could have become less useful if market conditions have changed, and those crops no longer need as much support. In that case, those funds could be reallocated to improve hospitals or schools where they would have a greater impact on society. Additionally, reducing entities could mean fewer jobs in the public sector. However, the idea is that by having a more efficient government, resources can be freed up to invest in areas that truly need it, benefiting everyone. It's worth noting, however, that while there is always some waste in a $7 trillion budget, the United States actually has a relatively small government compared to other countries. For example, in 2024, government spending was 37.5% of GDP, the lowest in the G7. This is why Musk aims to shrink the size of the United States government, but the big question is whether he will really be able to do so successfully. Cutting $2 trillion from the budget before mid-2026 would be extremely challenging. To achieve this, he would almost certainly need to make cuts to programs like Social Security, Medicare, and the defense budget. However, reducing these large programs requires congressional approval, although Republicans hold the majority in both the House and the Senate. This does not guarantee that these cuts can be ratified. For example, last month, Republican Senator Rand Paul proposed a bill to reduce spending by 6% each year until balancing the United States budget, but it was rejected by a majority of 56 to 39 votes. Among those who voted against were some Republicans who did not want to reduce defense spending. This difficulty is not unprecedented. Trump did not manage to cut the insurance subsidies of the Affordable Care Act during his first term. Thus, Musk and Trump are thinking of focusing their efforts on so-called discretionary spending, which is not permanently fixed by law and must be approved each year by Congress. In the past, attempts to cut spending focused on large and protected programs like Social Security and Medicare, which considered mandatory spending and are defined by existing laws, making them extremely difficult to reduce without a complex legislative process. Discretionary spending, on the other hand, offers more leeway because it is discussed and allocated annually, allowing cuts to be made more easily. Although this spending also needs to be approved, there is more flexibility to modify its allocation annually, making it more politically manageable compared to programs like Social Security and Medicare, which are more protected and harder to cut. In 2023, discretionary spending was approximately $1.7 trillion, almost half of which was allocated to defense, and a large part was used to pay federal salaries, ultimately cutting the federal budget by 30% in just 18 months would be very difficult and full of sacrifices. The only place where something remotely similar has been attempted is in Argentina. Their president, Javier Milei, cut the federal budget by 30% in just 1 year, closing 12 ministries and dismissing about 10% of public employees. Although these cuts allowed the Argentine government to have a monthly surplus for the first time since 2007 at the beginning of this year, they also triggered a severe recession with a GDP contraction of 3.5% and a poverty rate now exceeding 50%. Musk has been quite direct about this, and in a virtual conversation on the X platform, he clearly stated that the planned cuts would bring temporary problems. Conversely, Trump might not want to talk much about this topic, as he would be the one to face the political consequences. Additionally, it's important to consider that the comparison with Argentina is not perfect. Voters in Argentina chose Milei knowing they would face short-term difficulties, whereas Trump promised immediate economic growth. Elon Musk's role in the government raises important questions about potential conflicts of interest. If he leads an effort to reduce regulations, he could influence policies that directly affect his Companies like Tesla or SpaceX, for example, Musk has been critical of the Federal Aviation Administration for delays in approving SpaceX launches, and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, which regulates safety standards, impacting Tesla. Being in a position of power, he could modify these rules to benefit his businesses, and no one believes that a person like Musk could change his mindset to do whatever he wants in his companies but become impartial when working for the government. On the other hand, the reduction of regulations also intensifies general concerns. Many of these guidelines are established to safeguard safety, the environment, and consumer rights. For example, vehicle safety standards like airbags and seat belts ensure essential standards that save lives. If they were loosened, dangers could arise for users. In environmental terms, fewer limitations could simplify the execution of industrial projects, but at the cost of potential ecological harm. Although Musk claims that simplifying rules would foster faster progress, some critics argue that eliminating regulations without careful analysis could generate negative impacts that would later be complex to remedy, affecting both individuals and the environment. Musk argues that transparency is crucial for people to regain trust in the government. He proposes that everything be done openly without hidden deals or obscure maneuvers. The idea is that anyone can observe how the government allocates resources and how decisions are made. According to Musk, if citizens can identify failures and suggest corrections, the government will be more effective and accessible. Basically, it's like saying, here is everything, analyze it, comment, and help improve it. If you've made it this far, I want to say that you are truly a dedicated, courageous, and persistent person, and I want to challenge you to show this to the world. Comment below all the way to the end. Your comment will be proof that you not only seek knowledge but are also committed to success, financial freedom, and a true understanding of the challenges and solutions in the world around us. I'll leave a special heart on your comment as recognition for your effort. And before you go, you know what to do, right? Subscribe to the channel, activate the notification bell, and leave your like. This really helps the channel grow and continue bringing such rich and complete content to you. Oh, and to 2 video recommendations that I prepared with a lot of care are now appearing on the screen. Choose one of them and go watch it right now. See you in the next video.